Hey everyone, my name is Danilo Petrovic.
I'm Ilya Marchenko.
I'm Denis Kudla.
I'm Evgeny Donskoy.
I'm Henry Laaksonen.
I'm Peter Torebko, and you're listening to the Game to Love podcast.
Novak Djokovic's visa has been revoked by the Australian government and issued with a letter saying he will be deported.
He tested positive on December 16. On the 1st of January, he'd met the requirements for quarantine-free travel. On January 4, Djokovic announced he was travelling to Australia. He was detained in Melbourne when he arrived the next day.
Players, fans and staff at the Australian Open must be fully vaccinated unless there is a genuine reason why an exemption should be granted.
If that evidence is insufficient, and he'll be on the next plane home.
Czech player Renata Vorochova. She arrived last month and played a warm-up tournament before her visa was cancelled.
We are not angry with the people of Australia. We are actually angry with their politicians.
They are keeping him as a prisoner. It's just not fair. It's not human.
People have been upset about the fact that Novak has come in because of his statements over the past couple of years around vaccination.
You know special rules for Novak Djokovic?
He knew the conditions since a lot of months ago.
So whether someone wants to get a vaccine or not, that's completely up to them.
Novak Djokovic has been deported.
If this means that you miss the French Open, is that a price you'd be willing to pay?
Yes. I understand the consequences of my decision.
Hey, welcome back, tennis fans. Here we are. The Djokovic saga continues. And this one, I'm bringing you a live reaction to the interview, which is just kicked off. I'm going to be having it. I'm just going to be going through each of the stages of this interview. I think it's very interesting. The first time Djokovic has spoken out since he's been deported from Australia. So it's going to be interesting. Great to have all of you guys in. We got Eddie in saying nice intro. I'm guessing that's means to say. Great to have you in, buddy. Hi to Kaz as well there. The interview has started, saying the happy one. Yeah, it has. Appreciate everyone. Yeah, it is on the BBC in the UK. So I'm here. Thanks to Drime for joining our membership as well. Really appreciate that. Yeah, this one, I'll bring this one up just for you there so you can see it. As you can see, Djokovic saying, I'm grateful for the opportunity to answer questions from Amol Rajan and set the record straight. Watch the full interview today on BBC One, or go through it with Game to Love. I'm sure he would have said that as well if he could have. I'm going to take you through what's actually going on in it, because I've just seen the intro. Just was saying it was pretty similar to that intro that I just played you as well. They must have been watching Game to Love and taking a few tips. Thanks to Marco. They're saying press that like button. Definitely do that, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And yes, Sandra, you are right. It is on BBC One right now. So I'm going to be taking you right back to the start of the interview, and I'm just going to be listening in to some of the questions that are being posed, and then I'm just going to take you through some of Djokovic's answers, and then we can get some of your thoughts from the live chat, because I want to hear your thoughts about this. It's quite a big decision, really, from Novak to come out, and it's very, very bold of him to be doing this in a very elongated interview. You don't get many long interviews with these big players, and he's chosen to do that in this format, which you got to give the guy some respect. So he said he's kept mostly silent until now. Why did he agree to the interview is the first question from Amol Rajan. And the reason he was silent is because he wanted to respect his colleagues. I'm guessing he's meaning, well, everyone around him and all of the tennis players as well. Obviously, the main reason he was in Australia was just to do with tennis. And it was sort of taking away from the actual tournament itself. And he was big enough to stand up and say, I don't want this to be about me while I'm in Australia. So I'll continue. Yeah, the Australian Open. Yeah, the legal processes. Plus, he wanted to take time to reflect. Yeah, a lot of emotions. So you can understand. He's probably he's been cast across the whole of the world's media over the past month, or say month and a half. So you can understand he must have been feeling a lot inside, and it's easy just to come out straight away and snap. Better to take a more laid back approach and go back, gather your thoughts, and come back with a good response. So that's what he's doing right now. He's now asked him, do you feel like you've been misunderstood or misrepresented in the past few weeks as well? So his answer to this is as follows. He feels that there was a lot of wrong conclusions, and he's really sad and disappointed the way this ended in Australia for him. Sorry, Equilibrium. I can't actually show the videos that we get pulled off YouTube, but I will be taking you through all the questions from the interview and Djokovic's answers. Let me know in the live chat what you think about each of his answers, and where do you sit on? Do you sit on the fence? Do you sit on a pro Djokovic side, a negative Djokovic side? I want to hear all of your thoughts about it. So I'll be giving you my thoughts going through. So the way it all ended for him in Australia, because he was following his own story in the media. Well, he's saying he's happy he gets to tell his side of the story here today. That's the main part of this. Okay, he's asking a new question. He's saying that what does Djokovic make of some of the people who are watching him and thinking that all the restrictions that have been put upon them themselves and thinking that this guy thinks that he is above the law. What does he think about those type of sort of suggestions? He doesn't have to abide by the same rules as everyone else. So he's sympathizing with the Australians, Djokovic. He is the harshest lockdown out of all the countries in the world. And he can understand the frustrations from the public on him. And plus, well, he's saying about the newspapers, obviously, if he can understand the public and the way that they view him, because they're reading stuff or they're listening to stuff via media, and he hasn't had a chance to actually give his side of the story, so he can understand why people would have come to certain conclusions. And he's saying that he always follows the rules. He's posed the question to him. So when he was posed the question that there would be no special rules for Novak Djokovic in Australia, do you agree that there were no special rules for you? He agrees as well. And this is a big one. He's saying he's never used his privileged status to get into Australia by force. I think I had a tweet on here somewhere. I'd have to go through some of these. Yeah, it's this one here. So this is what he's saying at the moment. He's never used it. He said, I simply followed the rules. My medical exemption application was anonymous and approved by 2 different medical panels. So yeah, he was treated as anybody else. Yeah, he said he got given the possibility to have a medical exemption. So he put forward his sufficient amount of antibodies that he had at the time, and he got accepted. Yeah, he got accepted. Yeah, he got accepted by 2, anonymous, like independent Australian panel. So his name was not on the application. So yeah, you can see that. I think there were about 20 or 25 medical exemptions that were reviewed and accepted as well. So We've got Marco in saying, I'm in Australia and the government allowed many celebrities to fly in and out during the no-fly lockdowns, allowed rugby teams to travel, and it goes on. We have an election this year, and Novak, if you want to finish that one, Marco, go be my guest. Ping another one in the live chat. There you go. Laura saying anonymous, sure. No identifying info whatsoever. So is that sarcasm I'm detecting from you, Laura, there? A little bit, possibly. Anyway, I'll go back to what they're saying in the interview. So they're going through like a timeline. So in the 16th of September, he took a PCR test. It came back positive, but he didn't get the results till later the next day. But in the morning of the 17th, he was pictured maskless, obviously with some young tennis players at an event. But on the 18th, he did attend a photo shoot with L'Equipe, and he was in the knowledge that he did have COVID, though, then. So on January the 4th, he received an exemption that was made public. The next day, that was the 5th of January. He arrived, and then on the 6th of January, the visa was cancelled, as we all remember. After 4 days, on the January the 10th, the judge quashed the visa, and then it was revoked again on the 14th on the grounds of public safety this time. On the 16th, Djokovic lost his appeal and he did get deported, as we do all remember very, very well. Right, so he wants to set the record straight right now, and he's just going to pose him a few more questions. So these can be short and simple, yes or no answers from Novak Djokovic. You conducted a PCR test here in Serbia on December the 16th. After attending, 2 days after attending a basketball match where COVID was circulating. The court documents indicate that the Institute of Public Health of Serbia said the result came back positive 7 hours later around 8 p.m. But you were not told of the PCR result on that day, were you? You were told only later the next day. And this is one of those important ones because obviously he was at that event with all those children the morning of that next day. Yes, that is correct, he says. He said you did a rapid antigen or lateral flow test the following morning on the 17th of December. Yeah, following an awards before the awards presentation with children in Belgrade. That the result on his lateral flow test that morning was negative. So to be clear, you did not know that you had COVID-19 when you were unmasked and you met those children. He said, that is correct. So, next part. You then received your positive PCR result. And it indicated that you did have COVID-19 later that day on the 17th of December. Did you make any efforts to or you or your team make any efforts to notify the families of the children present at the award ceremony? So he says yes, and he interrupts the interviewer, and he says, "Okay, what precautions were taken then from your team?" Yes, we contacted them. Yeah, they said we contacted them. We did advise them that I did receive my PCR test, and it was positive. Now he's talking. The interviewer was talking about the picture that circulated online of Novak Djokovic with all of the children. As you can remember, it was quite a substantial number as well of them. Yeah, it caused huge anger around the world. Yeah, I mean, I think we all remember that one. It was very, very, it was very, very scary. Just to see him with all of those people, and the thoughts of the time were they'd done it knowingly, but this is what he's trying to sort of get from him at the moment, just to try and just to try and gauge him, I guess, just to try and find out. Like, I mean, you've got to tread carefully in this situation, because you have to believe what he says, I guess. He says, what would you say to those people who would argue that it was deeply irresponsible to attend that event before you had your PCR test results? And I think that's something we did actually discuss on the podcast. Myself, JG, John as well, went through all of the details. That was one of the things which I don't think I would have been comfortable knowing that I still needed to go to Australia and I needed to do all the other things until I received the PCR test result. I don't think I would be leaving if I was in his position. Obviously, if I was in that massive high position, it's a big risk. He says that he understands, in the context of everything that was happening in Australia, and he sees the photo of him unmasked with children, when the night before, like, he'd had the PCR test result that he had not seen. He said, I was also asymptomatic, so I felt fine. He said, I took a rapid antigen test that morning, and I wanted to be there for the children because he knows how much it means to them. For him to give them an award, they worked very hard for that. And he said, all I can say is I only saw my positive test just hours after that. So I said, the interviewer is asking him, do you wish in retrospect that you had not attended that event? And he said, look, I did not see the PCR test before that. He said, of course I wouldn't. He said, I can understand why people are angry, because when they see something like that, because it makes them feel uncomfortable. Hi, Gene. Just saying, yes, the interview. I'm just taking you through how the interview questions and answers from Djokovic and the interviewer at the moment. I've got a few tweets on here. We've got a few people like we've got hashtag We Stand With Novak as well. This is another nice tweet. That's a lot of people there to support Novak Djokovic in his stand. I'll continue with what's being said anyway. Yeah, and they're saying that you did attend the L'Equipe magazine photo shoot at the tennis center here in Belgrade with the knowledge that you were positive. He said that was poor judgment of error. That's Novak saying right now. That I wish I could bring back time and not have done it. He said, what was your thinking? Why did you go ahead with the L'Equipe interview, or photo shoot rather, if you knew you had COVID? And he's going to give the reasons now why he went through with it if he knew he was positive. He said, because of my respect for L'Equipe, one of the best sports paper in the world. The guy who was the journalist there, is someone he's known for many, many years. And he's always had a great relationship with him. Yeah, he said we had already organised that meeting for quite some time. I didn't want to let him down. Should he have been more cautious, he says. Should I have advised them? Yes, absolutely I should have. I wish I could take it back, he says. I stand behind it. It's my mistake. I'm really sorry. He says, do you remember when the interviewer now asked him, do you remember when you were first aware that having an infection that would create antibodies in your system would gain you access to Australia? Do you know when you first became aware of that? He's not exactly sure of the date. Probably the second week of December. We received an email that circulated for his attention that if you had a recent COVID infection, that you would be eligible to apply for this medical exemption. Yeah, and the interviewer saying, isn't it just awfully convenient that you got this COVID infection in mid-December? And they said, because that's the only way that you would have got to have played at the Australian Open. What would you say to those critics? He's saying he takes COVID very, very seriously. And he was making sure that he was taking the PCR tests as anybody else. And he'd never used his privileged status once in this country or in any other country. And he was tested hundreds and hundreds of times since the beginning of the pandemic, because that was what was required in order to travel, to fulfill his job as a tennis player. So he understands there's a lot of criticism. People are coming out with different theories, how convenient it is. He said no one is lucky and it's never convenient to catch COVID. He really doesn't like the thought that people thinking that he's misused something in order to get a positive PCR test. He said, I had COVID twice, but the second time it was asymptomatic. And the first time was about a year and a half ago. He said he had symptoms and it wasn't easy either. So he is saying he knows how it feels. So he definitely wouldn't be going around trying to contract the disease again, and especially wouldn't be wanting to give it to other people. Now the interviewer saying, do you worry that people have got the impression, looking at Australia, looking at the reporting, like the Adria Tour, the super spreader event? Yeah, that's just showing pictures of him, obviously, on the Adria Tour right now. Zverev, Dimitrov, Dominic Thiem, all people. I think Dimitrov was the first one who first contracted it, and that was when it all sort of blew up. Yeah, he's saying, what do you make of the people who say this Novak? The thing is about Novak Djokovic is he doesn't take COVID seriously. What would you say to those people? He said, well, that's a false conclusion. And he does take COVID very, very seriously, he says. So I'm just going to move on through some of these other tweets as well, just to this one here. Djokovic, the only unvaccinated player in the top 100 now. I think the other ones have dropped outside the top 100. There were 3. Move on through some of these other ones. Yeah, this one was a bit of a crazy one. BBC putting Djokovic at the top of the news. Meanwhile, Russia and Ukraine on the brink of war. Ridiculous editorial decision. Yes, indeed. Yeah, look, so anyway, I'll leave this one up there for now, and I'll take you back to the interview. he's saying about the Adria Tour, we respected every single protocol and policy that was in place in Serbia at that moment. At that moment, there was no masks required in Serbia, and we could host an event. He said, and I can understand that looking from a perspective of other countries, like the strict protocol countries, that it did not look good. And he's saying that every country has been dealing with COVID slightly differently to each other. So he said, now the interviewer is saying, you mentioned that your application for a medical exemption was anonymous, and it was approved by two independent Australian panelists. He said, separately, there is a travel declaration in which you had to fill in which your agent made an error, a human error, which you've apologized for. And your agent wrongly said that that you had not been anywhere other than Serbia before coming to Australia. But in fact, you had been to Spain. Yeah, we do remember this one. Yes. He said, can you see why a lot of people unaware of the detail of this saga, again, like are thinking maybe you or your team, are you playing fast and loose with the rules? Djokovic saying, I understand why people think that when you chronologically take all these things in consideration, they feel that I have cheated or it's something that is not right. He said, it was a human error made from one member of my team, and that has not influenced my deportation from Australia. He's talking, he said, I had not disclosed this, my medical record before and my vaccination status. I had the right to keep that private and discreet. But he said, as I can see, there is a lot of wrong conclusions and assumptions. So it's important to speak up and justify certain things. So I was never against vaccination. He said, I understand that globally, everyone is trying to put a big effort into handling this virus. And hopefully we'll see the end to this virus soon. Yeah, and the vaccination is the biggest effort to try and get rid of this virus. And he fully respects that. Yeah, he's always represented and always supported the freedom to choose what you put into your body. And for that's the one thing that's essential. I don't know if you saw the podcast we did earlier. If you haven't, go check that one out. This was one of the main things that he was talking about in there. Is like the freedom of choice is one of the things that he stands for very highly. And you can't really argue with him because he's always said that. He's always. And this is where he says it here. Look, what Djokovic chooses to put in his own body is his decision. Leave the man alone and let him play his sports. That's what Rupert Lowe says there. So I go back to what he's saying here anyway. He said it's a principle of understanding what is right and what is wrong. Like I said, and for me, I'm an elite professional athlete. I've always carefully reviewed, assessed everything that comes in, like from supplements, food, water that he even drinks, sports drinks, anything. Yeah. as a fuel, like anything that he could potentially benefit from. And this is something that we have seen from Novak. He has obviously become one of these, I could always say it, like a science project. And it seems like he is a little bit like that, because he is like the epitome of just like how you can make your body play so well at this age, where a lot of players, their bodies are giving up on them and they're into retirement. He isn't. He's fitter than the young players on the tour, and it's a testament to him, really. He takes it very seriously. That there is a process of precise decision making. Yeah, and he said, and it's like this, all of these decisions that have been made, it has been like that for the last 20 years. And that's what's allowed him to be playing at the level he's playing at. He said, and after all this, I've decided not to take the vaccine. He said, I just don't have enough clarity on of how much the COVID vaccine will affect him. Whether it's going to create a certain effect on his game. And maybe he won't have the benefits he would normally have from his everything else that he's putting into his body. So he doesn't feel that right now this is the thing for the right thing for him to be doing. So, and then now the interview is saying it's interesting because the World Health Organization, they're priding themselves on it is a safe vaccine and effective. Even the interviewer is saying your position is that you're not saying that it isn't effective, but you don't know the effects that it's going to have on you. And until you have more information, you're not going to have the vaccine. And he said that's exactly correct. Until I know what it will exactly do to my body, I'm not willing to put it into my body. He's saying we're all trying to collectively find the best possible solution. He said, I'm part of a very global sport, played every single week in a different competition. He said, I understand the consequences of my decision. He said, and one of the consequences of his decision was not going to Australia. He said, I was prepared not to go to Australia. He said, not being vaccinated today, I'm unable to travel to multiple countries and multiple tournaments. He said, is that the price you're willing to pay? Yes, that is the price I'm willing to pay. Which I think I've got some tweets in here as well stating that exact same thing. Let me just have a look. Bear with me 2 seconds. I will find all of this. Oh, there you go. There you go. So this one's from the New York Times. Is prepared to miss the French Open, Wimbledon, and other tennis tournaments if a COVID vaccine is required to compete. He said in the BBC interview, being free to choose what goes into your body is more important than any title. So yeah, he's saying, he's asking him a question like, taking a vaccine, does this appear that you're not taking like a good look upon your own health? He said he doesn't have anything against the general approach to vaccines because he had the vaccines when he was a kid. And currently he just does not have enough information about this vaccine. And as an elite athlete, he's very mindful about what he puts into his body. So he's just making a decision. I do not want to get vaccinated at the moment. And then the interview said, and then quite an interesting one. Where does this come from? I'm fascinated. He said, because I can see you believe extremely strongly in the sanctity and sovereignty of the individual and the individual's right to choose. Where does that come from? Why do you think like this? It's an interesting question. He said, perhaps it has something to do with my upbringing. So during the 90s, when I started playing tennis, 4 or 5 years old, they had 2 wars, the embargo, sanctions, waiting in line for bread and milk, a very difficult time for his family. And he was choosing to play a sport which is one of the most expensive sports. Yeah, very unaffordable for a lot of people. And his parents had to endure a lot of hardships. Yeah, to allow him to live his dream. And when he was traveling, he also had to very quickly mature and be independent and take care of himself. Because he couldn't travel with his father or any family members. Yeah, all of the tournaments he used to travel to alone. So he became very self-reliant. Saying it helped him establish his own character from very early on and to hold his ground. And he's saying what you're outlining is the classical political philosophy, the individual's right to choose. Yeah, the individual freedom and the right to choose, versus the collective good. He said, what do you make of it if one person chooses to not get vaccinated, that will undermine the collective good? So what do you make of that, Novak? He said he thinks everybody is entitled to their opinions. And he said everybody has the fundamental human right to choose what they put into their body. And he said, I just hope that people will respect what he has chosen, because he's obviously very, very set on what he's choosing. It's pretty obvious he's not backing down. And now he's talking about the interviewer's asking about the immigration officer, Alex Hawke. He said he cancelled your visa the second time. Said you were going to inspire anti-vax sentiment. And now they're quoting, an iconic world tennis star may influence people of all ages, young or old, perhaps especially the young, and to emulate him. Said this is not factual. It does not need evidence. What do you make of that? And he said, well, I completely disagree with that perception. He said very upset and disappointed in that in the way that they've perceived that. He said, I was deported on those bases from Australia. He said, I don't know what more I can say. So, and then he's saying to him, what, but you do inspire people, don't you? I mean, come on, you're the world number one. He said, yes, I do inspire people. He said, I've never inspired people to go out on the street and protest or be anti-vax. And he says, what would you say directly to vaccination protesters around the world who proudly declare that Novak, like Djokovic, is one of us? Oh, God, what a question. He sort of laughed. He's like, I say, everybody has the right to choose. Well, act or say whatever they feels that it's appropriate for them. And he said, I've never said I am part of that movement. He said, no one in the whole process of the Australian Open saga has asked him on his stance or his opinion on vaccination. No one. So I couldn't express it. Yeah, or he couldn't give his stance. So he said it's unfortunate. So this misconception, wrong conclusion that has been made, that based upon something that he disagrees with. So he said, I'm not here to sympathize with you. He said, what you experienced in that detention hotel was far from pleasant. Can you just talk us through what it was like? And now this is going to be quite an interesting thing to hear about, I think. I think this is one of the items that we were speaking about earlier. And the detention hotel, that was one of the horrible things. I mean, he was badly treated when he was there, but it did bring to light there are lots of refugees who are stuck in that place, and they've been stuck there for a very, very, very long time. And what it's very, very sad, and hopefully we're going to see now if he brings some light onto that. So let's just hear what he has to say. He said, definitely it wasn't pleasant. Yeah. He said, I don't want to. Yeah, he said, I definitely don't want to sit here and complain about being in there for 7 days when some people have been in there for years. Yeah, and that is the one thing that needs to be noted. Years some people are in there. Said it has deeply touched him. He said what the people in the detention centre in Melbourne are going through. Excuse me. So he said, my hardship was nothing close to what these people are going through. Said, and the interviewer's asked, did you feel powerless? I said, yes, I did feel powerless. He said, I was not allowed to use my phone for 3 or 4 hours. It was the middle of the night, 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. No sleep, questioning every 30 minutes. Then he stayed there for 4 or 5 days before the first court hearing. Said I was hoping for a good result. And then the visa was reinstated. Then first revoked, reinstated, then revoked again. I said I was able to start training, but it wasn't a regular type of training. Yeah, it's not the same as any other lead up to any Grand Slam competition whatsoever. Yeah, he said there was like drones flying above every single training session that he had. Cameras everywhere. Yeah, also his colleagues. Yeah, and he said, I felt the energy and those looks, and he said it really hurt me a lot. Yeah, from colleagues and people who worked within the tennis facility, and he said it really hurt him. He said, obviously, I can understand they had a perception based upon what the media were telling them. And he said, and I wasn't able, and he couldn't go out and speak to the media. It's because he was respecting the legal process. Yeah, I'm respecting the Australian Open. Yeah, and he said, but at that time, I really did want to speak to everyone. I really did. And give my explanation. Because he greatly cares about relationships with everybody, all colleagues, all people. Particularly the people that he'll be able to, see for many years to come. Like the colleagues, peers, the people that he sees probably more than he sees his own family. A very uncomfortable feeling that he had. I'm guessing it was probably like a social anxiety, probably a feeling of that, where you're wherever you are, you feel that people are probably talking about you or behind your back or staring at you, or no, you can't ever fully relax. He says, now the interviewer says, let's look to the future. You say that as things stand, you don't have enough clarity about the COVID-19 vaccine in order to let it enter your body. If that changes, and if you get enough new information that persuades you that it's not going to cause you harm, would you be prepared to change your mind? He said there's always a possibility that things will change in the future. But as of today, this is my decision. And that's my stance right now. He said, and I will suffer the consequences of not traveling. He said, hopefully, things will be able to change in the future. I'll keep my mind open. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I know. This is pretty, wow. I mean, you're just going to have to wait and see, I guess, with some of that. I'm just going to go quickly back through some of these other tweets as well that were coming in. This one, a bit of a harsh one coming in. Novak Djokovic may have cemented his place in the pantheon of clownish public figures. That was from Charlotte Klima there. And then this is a bit more positive. Djokovic now reached 360 weeks at world number 1 as well. So that's a good one to have in there. And there we go. This one's probably more fitting for this time of the conversation. We'll go back to it. And now the interviewer is saying, are you hoping that the international regulations change in order to let you travel to these tournaments? He says, I would sincerely hope so, because I really love to play tennis. This is what I love doing. I'm a professional tennis player. He's now the interviewer saying, but as things stand, this would mean you'd miss the French Open. Is that a price you'd be prepared to take? Yes, that is the price I'm willing to pay. He said, at the moment, of course. He said, I'm hoping that things will change. He said, I'm also hoping that I can play for many more years as well. He said, it's taking care of his body. And I think this is where he sort of bolsters his decision making on his body and the things, like the finely tuned machine that it is. And I think he probably sees himself playing at a high level for at least another 3 or 4 years. And he probably is thinking, well, if I put this in my body and it affects my body and I'm not able to ever get back to that level, and he ends up with some sort of long side effect, which you never know. You never know. It's a risk. It's always a risk, but a lot of risk. A lot of them, 60% of the world have taken, but it's a risk that he's not willing to take at the moment. So, yeah, see, his body has always been his highest priority, taking care of it. So that's the thing that's going to give him longevity in the sport. I said, and it doesn't matter what age he's going to be, he's always going to have that passion and flair. Put those ones together. Yeah, no matter what age he is in the sport. Yeah, exactly. And he's going to have many more opportunities to play the tournaments that he has missed. Now the interview saying, and if it means you miss Wimbledon again, that's a price you'll pay? Yes. A definitive yes from Novak. And the interviewer now saying, ultimately, I said, are you prepared to forego the chance to be the greatest player to ever have picked up a racket? Statistically. I like the fact he has to throw that one in there. Statistically, just so he doesn't get on the bad side of everyone else. Because you feel so strongly about this jab. And I like the way that he's very clever wording of his questions, because now he's labeling it just as a jab now. He's not labeling it as a vaccine. He's just like, is this just because of a little jab? He says, yes, I do. And he said, why, Novak? Why? And he said, because the principle of the decision making on his body is more important than any title. He said, do you understand why people looking at you with admiration of what you've achieved? They'd find it baffling. They'd say they'd have the jab. They've been triple jabbed, didn't hurt. Didn't affect them. No after effects. Here's a guy who could win 30 Grand Slams. But he might end up with 21, 22, 21, 22, 23. Because he feels so strongly about the principle of the right to choose. Can you understand why people find that hard to understand? He said, I hope that people can respect if they cannot understand. Like his decision to do so. The interviewer saying, given that you're normally in Grand Slam finals, it said, it must have been a strange experience for you watching Rafael Nadal in the Australian Open final playing Daniil Medvedev. He said, presumably you saw it on TV. And Djokovic said, I didn't want to watch the match. He said, I felt I really wanted to be on the court. He said, it was really hard for me to watch. He said, I couldn't participate in any type of tennis match in any way. So it's like, he said, I was neutral. I couldn't cheer for anyone. Could he not? Are you sure? Are you sure you couldn't cheer for anyone? He said he wanted to be there so bad. He said, but I was amused by the circumstances that I couldn't be there. And he said his wife was cheering for Medvedev. His son was cheering for Nadal. That son's going without dinner for dinner for a few weeks, maybe. This son was fist pumping like Rafa every time that Rafa was winning a point. That's quite funny. He said it, but the interview's making a very good question. But if you were playing Nadal, he would support you over Nadal, wouldn't he? He said, yeah, yes, well. He said, I hope so. I like it. He also said, oh, yeah, he actually asked me a few days ago when I was putting him to sleep, when is the next tournament where you're going to participate and play, but where Rafa will also be in the tournament? He said, I'm not sure. I said, hopefully soon. I said, why are you asking me that? He said, well, I'd really like to get a photo of Rafa. He said, don't worry, we'll get that arranged. Oh, God, his son, a Rafa fan. Who would have known it, eh? And now the interview is saying, you're 34. He said, you've got a lot of tennis and life ahead of you. He said, what do you want your legacy to be? He's been blessed with amazing results that he's had throughout his career. And he still wants to continue to make records and break records. It's not the most essential thing. And the reason why I still play tennis. He said, the main reason I play tennis still is because I still feel the connection with the inner child. The 4-year-old boy that picked up the racket and said, I just love this sport. I could play all day. And he still loves just being at the center every day, just being in the role of a player and a coach. He said he spends most of his time in Serbia at the tennis center, coaching kids of different ages on the court. And always encourages them to ask questions. He said, you're not supposed to know everything. He said, if you draw the motivation and the strength from the right source, and the passion and love from the game, you'll always find that necessary energy. He said, we know you said you're supposed to not know everything, but I said, well, he's just thanking him, saying, thank you very much for speaking to the BBC. Like, I think he's what a great interviewer as well. I think he did a great job there. We got to give hats off to the interviewer, Amol Rajan. Really, really great interview. Yeah, very, very good. And that's how they're wrapping it up by the looks of it. Oh, quite a good one. That, I mean, hopefully that will be out online very, very soon. I'm sure the BBC will try and put that one onto YouTube for you. If you have the opportunity to maybe get a VPN and get onto the BBC iPlayer, then maybe try that. But otherwise, I'm sure someone will be showing it very, very soon. But yeah, very I think a very nice interview, a very fair interview, just to allow Novak to have his say and his side of things. Let's just go to the live chat to see what you guys are thinking of it. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to go through it. It's a bit difficult just on my own and trying to give a word for word, a dialogue of what was going on in that interview. But hopefully I gave you an idea of what was going on in it, and you can sort of understand where Novak's coming from on his side of the story. And let me know if you think that if you changed sides? Do you think Novak's a bit more? I don't know. Do you believe his words a bit more now? Now he's actually had his say, or do you still stick against him? Because I'm very interested to hear. There we go. We've got JD saying, I agree with Novak on this occasion. His choice ultimately. Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of things that we got to remember on this subject as well. Is that Djokovic, he alluded to it earlier on in the interview, is he was prepared not to travel. He wouldn't have traveled if they said there was no medical exemption. He only tried to follow the rules of a medical exemption. And I always stuck with that from the beginning of when we were doing all the trial things and everything. I didn't think that he would have even entertained it if there was no possible way of going. He's just confirmed that, essentially. I'll see if there was any other tweets, because I was trying to go through some of them. There was the stand-up, we stand with Novak. We've got... there you go. We got is that Zejko? Sorry, saying Novak is running a marathon, not a sprint. Keep calm and love Nole. Yep, and then we got Marlene saying I stand with Novak. Yeah, there you go. And Philip saying view on Novak unchanged. He is stubborn and is now not focused on tennis but highly political. Ooh, interesting. Maybe the next president of Serbia. Who knows? Who knows? There we go. We got Dewey Jones, one of our members, in saying he would have been on 21 if he hadn't have tweeted boasting about the exemption. It's a very interesting point. If he hadn't have mentioned it, would we be in a different situation right now? Anya wants to know what I think. I'll tell you what I think. I didn't think it was the most in depth of interviews. I think that there were limitations that the interviewer was under, where he had to make a portion of the interview yes or no answers, which a little bit frustrating. But if you want the interview, you probably have to agree to some of the terms that Novak were or his team would have given, and he probably wouldn't have wanted to elaborate on certain things. And it's interesting. We were alluding to in our podcast earlier. I still think there was a lot of unanswered questions in it. It doesn't change my views that much. I like that we've heard from Novak, and I'm quite nice to see more the human side of Novak. I like it when we get to hear about him in his family environment, that type of thing, because I do think there is a care inside there, and I do think that ultimately he does do a lot of good in the world as well. There's a lot of people been giving him a bit of a bad press. It's difficult to get good press, obviously, given the situation that was in, and he did have one thing that he did have to own up to. She was going out with COVID, and he should have not done that. This is all based upon stuff that we know, though. The trouble is you only know what you're told, and we just have to take their word for it until proven otherwise. So that's the way it has to go. I can take that interview for everything that it said, and I'd say I'm happy, but I'm still not really happy with the decision that he doesn't really. So he's not going to play. I think he still will play. I think that we're going to see the world travel back to normal soon. I think that this is sort of put out in line with, like we were saying earlier, I think that it is going to... I think he sort of knows that the world is going to start allowing people to travel. So in the UK, it's probably fine. I think the French Open, there's a high possibility that he'd probably be able to. I think the US Open... it's a long way away. Who knows? By that time, it might be okay. And who knows? By the Australian Open next year, we might not even be talking about it. So I'm interested to know what you guys think. I've got Gary in, another one of our members, saying, I am as big a Novak guy as there is. I still am. But I only reluctantly respect his decision because I am pro-vaccine, but I'm pro-vaccine for the betterment of humanity. I think that's I think it's just a lot of the way that people just are getting it done just because if everybody does, it's just sort of, they just hoping that we can go back to normal sometime soon. There is obviously the other side, but people say if everybody was to get infected, then you get a herd immunity style thing as well. But I'm no doctor, so I'm not going to go in deep on actual all of the ins and outs of COVID, because we know that I only know about, I don't know, not even 100th of probably what all of the doctors or all these scientists know about it. Just from listening to podcasts or listening to them speak. So who knows? And things are always changing. Developments are always changing as well. Let's go have a look through some of these tweets. Sorry if I've been through some of them already. I'll just have a look. See if I've missed any out. Okay, here we go. There we go. So this one's from Owen, and it's saying, so deeply disappointing that the last chapter of the GOAT race is going to be characterized by Djokovic essentially opting out because he insists on sticking to the BS that endangering other people is a personal choice. That's one way of looking at things there. So is it over though? Is the GOAT? I don't think it's only one difference at the top. So I still think there's potential for Novak to easily end on the top of the pile. But we've got Kathy in, another one of our members, saying choice about one's body obviously only pertains to men's bodies. Interesting. There you go. That's another political standpoint there from Kathy, it seems. Hope you're well, Kathy. And we've got Fatima in, another one of our members, saying spring will come. It will be better. Well, let's hope so. Well, guys, if you want to try and join our membership, if you want your comments to be seen more regularly and I can bring them up a lot easier from the live chat, then just hit the join button under this video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and hit a like on this video as well. It really does help the channel out. I'll just go through the last few of these tweets just to see if there's any that I did, in fact, miss. All right, 1 second. Oh, no, that was... yeah, okay. Well, we'll just end on this one then. I think it's a good place to finish. Novak Djokovic has now reached 360 weeks at world number 1. I think that's a very, very apt point to end this on. I'm happy that you all joined me for it. I hope I did it justice the best I could here on me lonesome. And I hope we see Novak Djokovic back on the court again soon. That's all I can say. I'll remove that. We'll hopefully be bringing you some more podcasts coming up later this week. There's obviously a lot of tennis which is going on in and around the world at the moment. We got tournaments over in Delray Beach. We got tournaments in Doha. We got tournaments in Marseille, Rio, and Dubai as well on the women's side. So make sure to hit a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new to be kept up to date with all of the videos that we will be putting out there. But for now on this one, I think we better end on the intro, don't you guys? All right. I'll see you soon. But for now, court adjourned, I think they call it, don't they?
Novak Djokovic's visa has been revoked by the Australian government and issued with a letter saying he will be deported.
He tested positive on December 16. On the 1st of January, he'd met the requirements for quarantine-free travel. On January 4, Djokovic announced he was travelling to Australia. He was detained in Melbourne when he arrived the next day.
Players, fans and staff at the Australian Open must be fully vaccinated unless there is a genuine reason why an exemption should be granted.
If that evidence is insufficient, and he'll be on the next plane home.
Czech player Renata Vorochova. She arrived last month and played a warm-up tournament before her visa was cancelled.
We are not angry with the people of Australia. We are actually angry with their politicians.
They are keeping him as a prisoner. It's just not fair. It's not human.
People have been upset about the fact that Novak has come in because of his statements over the past couple of years around vaccination.
You know special rules for Novak Djokovic?
He knows He knew the conditions since a lot of months ago.
So whether someone wants to get a vaccine or not, that's completely up to them.
Novak Djokovic has been deported.
If this means that you miss the French Open, is that a price you'd be willing to pay?
Yes.
I understand the consequences of my decision.